Sanford and Edenville residents, you are urged to evacuate immediately.
It's scary.
This is serious.
Is 9 feet of water possible?
We were told to leave.
The way it was coming up, it just wasn't stopping.
It was like, whoa.
This is the craziest we've ever seen.
Just insane.
Unimaginable.
We're going to get through this.
We're going to come back from this.
There's hope coming.
This is our community. You have to help people in need.
We are good people. We'll rebuild.
We're coming to you tonight from the Sanford Dam on the eve of the anniversary of one of the worst disasters to hit our area in decades. Good evening, everyone. I'm David Custer.
And I'm Meg McLeod. Scars are still visible, and recovery will take years. Let's take a look back at how we got here. It was an abrupt night for thousands nearly 1 year ago after being told to evacuate their homes when it became known that the nearby dams were facing imminent failure after several days of heavy rain. Once those dams failed, water rushed into communities, leaving them completely flooded as the water continued to rise.
That water covered communities as far north as Iosco County all the way through Saginaw County. The devastation prompting a state of emergency from the governor for several mid-Michigan counties. It would be several months before many communities could even recover. Some are still trying.
TV5's James Felton shows us how this historic flood turned so many lives upside down.
Leave now, water's coming.
Those are the words Kimberly Sedler heard from emergency crews after the breach of the Edenville Dam on May 19th of last year. Sedler and her daughter Megan evacuated their home.
Scared, just grab the dogs and go, and not knowing what was going on, what was to come.
When they returned, just to get to the front door, they had to use a snow shovel to plow through the muddy mess and look inside.
There was a total upside down turn in the stomach, make you drop to your knees with, never would have imagined the damage done.
My mom and I looked at each other and we just cried.
A rush of emotions as they watched their personal belongings floating inside their mud-filled home, a place where they once found comfort. At one point, the water in the house rose to 1.5 feet high on the second floor.
Seeing your house like that and all the memories just washed, it's just devastating.
After the flood, Sedler lived in this camper a short drive away until January.
That's when she was provided this home by the owners of Sanford Hardware.
There's lots of people in Sanford that hug and cry.
Oh, yes.
And give support to a neighbor in need. Sanford Hardware co-owner Kathy Cyan says she didn't know Sedler before the flood. Now they're great friends.
Glad that we could help her out through the months that she's needed help until she can get back in her own home.
Cyan decided to refurbish an old farmhouse on her property. Then she worked with the village of Sanford to find someone who could use the home. That's where Sedler came in.
Having a place for your animals and having a place where you knew you could always go and crash at the end of the day after you've worked on your project that is long and hard.
Cyan says at the peak of the flood, Sanford Hardware was underwater. She tells us the community has rallied around her business and she wanted to pay it forward.
They've blessed us greatly and we were doing the same.
And with each passing day, the Sedlers are making progress to reclaim their home.
They did change the layout of the house. The house has had its updates, which is nice because at the end of the day, you're like, I guess I needed it anyway.
Kimberly Sedler has been told she can stay at Cyan's farmhouse for as long as needed, and that could take up to a year or more. That extra time is actually welcomed by Sedler, who is still struggling emotionally with the aftermath of the flood.
As much as I'm excited, looking forward to, being here, I'm also scared to be here. Just that the same anxiety that went through from the beginning, and I know it'll just take time and it'll go away. I'm not worried about another flood. It's just you can't erase the memories yet.
Reporting in Midland County, James Felton, WNEM-TV5.
Sanford Hardware just had a soft reopening last week, giving credit to their tight-knit community for helping them reopen their doors once again.
It was just last month a federal agency assessed a $15 million penalty against Boyce Hydro, LLC. It penalized 3 of the company's projects for safety violations. Those 3, Sanford, Secord, and Smallwood, which it says includes the Sanford Dam collapse that forced the evacuation of 10,000 people and the catastrophic flooding. Boyce Hydropower filed for bankruptcy protection in May 2020, and the penalty won't be paid until after flood victims are compensated.
Everything leading up to last year's flood made for the perfect storm.
Chief Meteorologist Brian Bachman joins us now with how Mother Nature played a role in this disaster. Brian.
Well, David and Meg, behind me is the Curry Parkway Bridge spanning the Tittabawassee River in Midland. Now, just 1 year ago, floodwaters had inundated this entire basin, and water was running over the span of the bridge itself. And in fact, where I'm standing here on the river's edge would have been nearly 10 feet underwater. Last year's catastrophic flood was the result of days of record rainfall across the state, combined with the failure of the Edenville and Sanford dams. Tonight, we take a look back at the storm that caused it all.
It all began the morning of Sunday, May 17th, 2020, with a stalled low-pressure system over Illinois. Systems like these tend to occur over the Great Lakes once or twice every spring when low pressure becomes cut off from the main steering currents of the polar and subtropical jet stream. These systems can hover over the region for a few days before slowly drifting away to the east. Rain began to spread northward across Michigan late Sunday morning, becoming steadier that afternoon. Fed by a steady stream of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, the rain intensified late Sunday night and was followed by several more periods of heavy rain on Monday. The rain finally tapered off during the early morning hours of Tuesday, May 19th, as the low finally drifted southeast of the region. By storm's end, much of mid-Michigan had picked up anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rainfall, but the heaviest rain fell along a swath from the Tri-Cities into northern lower Michigan. A total of 4 to 8 inches of rain fell across this area, with Au Gres reporting the highest amount at 8.1 inches. Widespread flooding was already occurring on Tuesday morning, with area rivers already seeing a rapid rise in water levels, and things were about to get much worse. As meteorologist Rich Pullman from the National Weather Service in Detroit explains, it was not just the amount of rain that triggered the ensuing flood, but where the rain fell.
For the aerial coverage that we had, because we had a huge footprint from Saginaw all the way up into Aranac and Iosco counties. Unfortunately, that aerial coverage was almost the exact footprint of the Tittabawassee River Basin.
Additional runoff from Aranac and Gladwin counties would ultimately push the Tittabawassee River past its breaking point. Flash flood emergencies were issued during the afternoon of Tuesday, May 19th, prompting the evacuation of nearly 10,000 people in Edenville, Sanford, and the city of Midland. By that evening, both the Edenville and Sanford dams had failed, leading to an additional surge of flash flooding that destroyed several buildings and washed out numerous roads.
To have that kind of coverage of 4 to 8 inches of rain out of a 2-day rain event, that's where you're probably leaning into more of that 500-year flood event.
The flood would go down as the worst in our region's history. A record crest of just over 35 feet was recorded on the Tittabawassee River in Midland on May 20th, passing the previous benchmark set by the flood of 1986. May 2020's event came just 3 years after another near-record flood in 2017, which was also brought on by an extreme rainfall event. So are we likely to see more rain like this in the years ahead? While any one event is impossible to predict months or years out, it is becoming clear that climate change is increasing the odds.
Heavy rainfall events are one of the strongest signals that you see with climate change, and especially for the north half of the United States and for much of Canada. You get wetter conditions.
With the looming concern of more events like this happening in the future, the most important thing any of us can do now is to prepare. Prepare on a personal level by having a flood action plan for you and your family, and prepare on a local and state level by improving infrastructure to better handle the runoff from extreme rainfall. Reporting in Midland, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brian Bachman. David and Meg, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Brian. The water rushed down the Tittabawassee River, and downtown Midland was right in its path. Within just a few hours, the farmers market pavilion near the Tridge was swallowed up as water crept its way toward Main Street. The Tittabawassee ended up cresting at just over 35 feet, setting a new record at 7 feet over what's considered major flood stage. The previous record was set back in September of 1986 at 33.89 feet.
Damage estimates to infrastructure from the flood could exceed $100 million. It was only 2 months ago that traffic opened up once again on the M30 bridge in Edenville. The original bridge was washed away, and this new 230-foot steel structure will act as a temporary solution, intended to be in place for 5 to 7 years. This $4.5 million structure allowed MDOT to quickly reopen the roadway less than 1 year after the flood, as opposed to 3 to 5 years for a permanent bridge. As powerful as the rushing water was as it lifted up buildings and buses, one community has proven to be even stronger. Sanford Strong, to be exact.
With muddy boots on the ground, they've been working tirelessly since just hours after the flood. TV5's Blake Keller shows us how Sanford Strong helped its community muscle its way out of the rubble.
If you're not from Sanford, you wouldn't know it now, but a year ago, before the floods, this lot of land was home to a quaint neighborhood full of families.
I mean, it's not even close to what it used to be.
If you go to Sanford, there's a good chance you'll see or hear the phrase Sanford Strong. Just take a look around. It's hard not to miss the words plastered on shirts, cars, businesses, and signs like this statue that was built for Sanford last year. Quintana and Rickard say the phrase truly is a rallying cheer.
One of the things that I love is that whenever I drive around, I see the signs and I see the bumper stickers. It's really awesome to see all that.
Yeah, I think for the rallying cry, when I named the Facebook group, that's really what I was looking for. I thought, what is a way to encourage people in Sanford to come together? We are an incredibly gritty town that can really make it through a lot.
The group is a common place for resources, professional and mental health help, sometimes money and furniture for flood survivors in need. So it's no surprise the group is widely considered a saving grace.
It grew really quickly because it became a platform where people could go to find information, you know, and then there's sort of people who step up into leadership roles.
And I'm going to be full on honest. We also used it as a tool to sort of demand the help that we needed here. I don't know where we would have been. I think we would still be deep in the mud, deep into August.
Throughout the last year, they've been collecting funds at the Midland Community Area Foundation. The money mostly used to buy building materials, but they can never grant money to individuals in need. So to better serve residents and get the money directly to those people, Sanford Strong was approved as a 501c3 nonprofit. So what is next for Sanford Strong?
I really don't know. We still have a long way to go, and I'm not stopping.
No.
But I'm really just thinking about what we need right now, and I'm not thinking really about, you know, my future or whatever.
This really isn't about us. It's about how we can help the community find the resources and the people that we really need to make sure our town is as strong as it can be, and that people are served in the best way they can be served, and that people remain happy and comfortable and safe here in Sanford.
The Facebook group clearly has changed a lot of lives, and still there's a push to get more volunteers to come back out to Sanford. The village still needs help sifting through and cleaning up debris so that the rest of Sanford can look as pristine as the new Porty Park. I'm in Sanford. Blake Keller, WNEM-TV5.
A year later, and there are still people working to rebuild, but some can't do it alone. The United Way of Midland County continues to organize volunteer efforts. If you'd like to help with projects like painting or moving furniture, you'll find a link to current opportunities in the Hot Links section on WNEM.com.
People lost everything that was sacred to them in the flood.
And that included the ashes of a loved one for a Sanford woman. But there's a happy ending. We'll show you the incredible moment they're found, caught on camera.
Plus, what happens next? When will the dams be fixed and the water return? We're taking your questions to the people in charge of making those decisions. But first, a look back at the sights and sounds 1 year ago.
It's the craziest we've ever seen.
We've watched waters go from, manageable to unmanageable.
Experts are describing this as a 500-year event. It's going to have a major impact on this community and on our state.
Well, it's been in my family for 55 years. There's the big cat.
The flood washed away decades of memories. After 55 years, one woman had to say goodbye to her family's signature red home.
The damage was too much to repair, but she didn't have to shoulder the burden of rebuilding alone.
This is more than I would have ever expected anyone to do for me.
A deep sense of gratitude for Penny Tyler, who got a new home after losing hers to the flood.
In July, we showed you the demolition of Tyler's log cabin and reported about a community effort that quickly organized to build another home to call her own.
Been watching this house go up, and all I could think is it's going to be just so cozy. I just can't wait to go in there and just be able to sit down and relax for a minute.
This was the culmination of those efforts when she got to step inside for the first time. She found words hard to come by.
Oh, it's so overwhelming. I mean, I'm so happy I waited for this day, and it's amazing.
She says she's looking forward to returning to a normal life.
And one woman was like many who lost everything, but she was determined to find something that could never be replaced.
I wasn't able to find her for 4 weeks, almost 4 weeks now. And I've gone out to my house 8 times.
Kathy Parsh spent almost 4 weeks searching for her mother's ashes that were swept away in the floodwaters. Parsh and her close friend would take their kayaks out to the spot where her home once stood and dig through the rubble.
If I can find the floor, I know that I can find her. She's in this corner. I just could feel it. And I found a piece of broken window. It was a fairly large enough piece, and I took it very carefully and I started digging with it.
They were right. They found the urn with the ashes last June, calling it a miracle and happy to have her mom back home.
The community comes together to give a father and his daughters a new place to call home.
Why the floodwaters can't destroy the foundation of this new beginning for the Billings family. But first, another look back at nearly a year ago.
I left for work at 7:30 this morning. It was bone dry. My daughter called me about 10 o'clock this morning and said there was probably about 2 or 3 inches of water in the basement.
We have never been through an event such as we're experiencing today.
This is really a great moment to see Chris back in his home. Just shows how fast we can move as a full community.
A tough year leading to a bright new beginning for a local man and his 3 daughters.
They have a new home built on the foundation of the support from their community. Here's TV5's Kendall Keys.
It's really nice to call it home.
Chris Billings is finally able to call somewhere home, nearly a year after his life changed drastically.
Chris's house was more or less destroyed by the water, and we ended up having it demoed.
The Edenville Dam failure in Sanford left him and his 3 daughters living first out of a camper and then a hotel.
You know, you see it everywhere else, but you didn't, honestly think it would happen to us here, you know? And it did.
Behind me, you can see the camper where Chris and his 3 daughters lived for about 6 months. Their new home is a major upgrade.
This is really a great moment to see Chris back in his home. There were many, many people who helped Chris and I and United Way and Habitat.
He's moving in just days before the flood's 1-year anniversary.
Just shows how fast we can move as a full community.
It's a happy time for the Billings family, but the past year was tough. The community support and his 3 girls are his support system.
That's the thing that got me going, was my 3 girls. For the longest time, that's what it was. It's just me and my 3 girls.
Now Billings and his 3 girls have room to grow.
There's a lot more room.
In Sanford, I'm Kendall Keys, WNEM-TV5.
That is just one of many heartwarming stories coming out of the devastation.
Still to come, what does the future hold for the thousands of people living along the lakes and rivers impacted by the flood disaster? And when should we expect the water to return? But first, more clips from nearly a year ago.
We can't get back and forth over that river, east or west. We have to go south.
The initial readout is that this was a known problem for a while, and that's why it's important that we do our due diligence.
You can't just throw your hands up and say, well, I don't have the financial resources, I don't care anymore, so I'm going to abdicate my responsibility, because rivers are relentless. They never stop.
No one wants a repeat of that historic flooding, but preventing that from happening again and restoring the lakes is a monumental task.
TV5's Frank Turner spoke with the 4 Lakes Task Force about the scope of that work and the realities these communities face going forward.
The lake's now drained or drawn down 8 to 10 feet. Residents anxious about when the water will return, but restoring the lakes will take several years. The vice president of the Four Lakes Task Force, assembled in mid-2018, says all 4 dams require repairs, including replacement of some spillway gates, bringing them up to state capacity standards, and restructuring earth and embankments to meet new safety regulations.
A few tens of millions of dollars worth of work scheduled to do on Smallwood and Secord dams. We expect to have that work completed and have the lakes back up for the summer of 2024.
For which residents will have to pay.
There will need to be a special assessment against homes around the lakes that benefit from the return of the lakes to their normal levels.
The Sanford and Edenville dams, partially washed out by the flood, have much bigger problems. $117 million, the dollar estimate for Edenville, $51 million to rebuild the Sanford. Sanford rebuilt and the lake refilled by 2025 is the estimate. The Edenville Dam repaired and the Wixom Lake refilled in 2026.
We've got eroded shorelines. I'm very involved in the project to repair shorelines that are eroded to the point where the safety of structures, of homes on the shoreline are threatened.
Shoreline repairs that started last October, about 40% complete. Tons of debris scattered on the bottom of Wixom Lake, including 4,100 trees and 90,000 cubic yards of sediment.
At the moment, we are just trying to press forward and get these homes in danger protected and make sure the dams aren't going to break and make our problems worse.
Rothman says the staggering amount of money needed to repair the dams and lakes, far more than anticipated, and the special assessments against lake homeowners will be substantial without additional state or federal help. Frank Turner, WNEM-TV5.
A sobering reminder that these communities have come so far from this devastating flood, but there's still a long road to recovery.
Tomorrow, on the 1-year anniversary, Sanford is celebrating its rebirth. And make sure you stick with us on air and online for these events.
Until then, thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks for watching WNEM-TV5. Watch us wherever you are, on our mobile, on our streaming news app, and you can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV.